Start. Yeah. Right, welcome officers, councillors and members of the public to the meeting of the Licensing and Community Safety Committee. Please switch off your mobile phones to silent.
Well, I've got dead in here anyway.
Pardon?
Don't get any signal in here.
There are members of the press attending this meeting virtually. But please ask those attending virtually to switch off your microphone to avoid any disruption during the meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available in due course on the council's YouTube channel. Reminder for councillors. To ensure that those attending can hear the proceedings and for the recording to capture the entire meeting, please ensure that you project your voice and speak clearly. Please remember it's a formal meeting and therefore do not refer to councillors by their first names. There is no fire alarm planned, therefore upon hearing the fire alarm, please leave the building via your nearest marked fire exit and assemble at the top of the top car park. Please be aware that the contents displayed on your iPad or laptop may be seen by others or members of the public attending the meeting. Therefore, please close down screens which are displaying confidential information during the public part of the meetings. I also thought it'd be useful for officers, please, to introduce yourselves just for the recording so that people watching back will know your job titles as well, if possible. So,
Yes, Katie Nichols, new officer, Environment Officer on Commercial Regulation, Northern Council.
Hi, Tim Botersall, Community Protection Officer.
Donna Money, Community Safety Partnership and Child Centre Policing Sergeant.
Kate Moran, Social Behaviour Officer.
Thank you. Kate Johnston Clark.
thank you. Right, let's start beginning then. Item number 1, apologies for absence. Please.
I've received apologies from councillors Denton, Maskell and Williams, and Councillor Whitehead is attending today as guest chair.
Thank you very much. Item 2, to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of June 2025 and the Licensing Subcommittee A of the 22nd of October 2025. I'll take the first one first, if I can take a proposer for the minutes of the last licensing meeting. Thank you, and a seconder. And all those in favour? I'm going to abstain. And then the Licensing Subcommittee A, I'll propose that one. Do I have a seconder? And all those in favour? Unanimous? Item 3, items brought forward which in the opinion of the chair should be considered by the meeting as a matter of urgency. I don't have anything. And then item 4, declarations of interest, please.
Received them, Chair.
Any today? No, thank you. Item 5, to agree the agenda between Part A and Part B. There is no Part B, so we'll just continue with Part A. So, item 6, Hackney Carriage Fare Tariff Review, pages 13 to 58 of your agenda. Report by the Lead Officer Commercial Regulation. This is quite a complicated one, so we often got to strike the balance between fair wages for taxi drivers and affordability for passengers. So I'm going to pass over to Katie now. Thank you.
Yeah, those that were at the last meeting when we reviewed our taxi tariff will remember we made quite a substantial review to the fares. And at 1.3, you can see the changes that were done in the past. That was on the 11th of July 2022. We changed night rates substantially. 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock. It was previously 11:30 at night. The valid charge was increased from £75 to £100. Non-motorised vehicle fares were increased from £1.50 to £2 a minute. And we had a fuel surcharge, which was added on of 10 pence to allow for some volatility in fuel price. And that was when fuel oil exceeded £1.75 per litre based on the latest fuel price report. And that was from South West Average, AA. Unfortunately, they don't provide that any longer, as you'll see in the report. So we need to make a slightly different mechanism to allow for that. But there's been a number of changes that were made on the 11th of July, and subsequent to that, there's been no amendment made to the taxi tariff, and it's prudent now to consider variation to the table of fares. Now, it's the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 1976, which provides the council the power to authorise fares, and these are the maximum fares that taxi drivers may charge. A lot of drivers may charge below that maximum if they wish to do so, but obviously that isn't a maximum set in there in the legislation itself. And that section 65 sets the process for the council to set these maximum fares, and that requires the advertisement in a local newspaper. So following your consideration, the process goes on in line with section 65 and an advertisement, which I've got outlined in the report. So what's relevant? So from that period, from July 2022, when the last review took place, there's been a 13.7% increase in CPI from that period to September 2025, which is the last date where CPI data was available. And we've had a decrease in fuel price in that period subsequent to the last review, which is obviously tempered with that CPI increase that I've noted. So the price for diesel was 55.75 pence per litre. And from 11th of July 2022, we've got 198.74, and on 13th of October 142.99, so 55.75% pence per litre decrease, which is 28.05% in terms of percentage rate for that decrease over that period. So further to the review, the team have put out consultation, and you'll see in the representations listed at Appendix E, we've had a number of trade representations, and I've tried to summarise these within the report because there's quite a disparity in what the trade would like to see, ranging from some drivers wishing there to be no change or actually for the tariff to go down, right the way through to some substantial increases that are proposed. In the report, I've tried to, as I said, provide a summary of that. And so you'll note at 412, 7 drivers cite that they believe there's an imbalance between night and day rates, and that this discourages drivers to work during the day, contributing to a lack of coverage for daytime trips, especially relevant for vulnerable persons. And there's a proposed flag rate increase to £3.90. One of these 7 suggests that night rate be reinstated to 23:30 hours. 2 drivers don't support an increase. One notes, if anything, there should be a decrease. Night rates are too expensive and losing trade custom. One driver wishes to see fares in line with inflation and minimum wage increases. One driver wishes to make only one change across the tariff, namely to amend flag rate to £5. And so on and so forth. I don't propose to read all of the summary there, but you'll see there's quite a wide range in views. In terms of the report, there's other factors with the tariff. Not only is there a flag rate, which is obviously the initial distance. In previous tariffs, that used to be 3/4 mile here at North Devon Council, but we reduced that to 1/2 mile, really to gain for efficiency, because our officers used to have to go from here to Widden Valley to meter test a vehicle. That was a good stretch of 3/4 mile and a relatively straight road where we could do that. And so we changed that to 1/2 mile, so we can test here from Sanderslade right the way up through to where you come out on the junction to enter Brinswebby, which is a really useful process for us internally. And actually it's worked really well because it's more straightforward for the customer to work out their tariff and what they should be charged over a 2, 5, 10 mile journey than if you have a tariff at 3/4 mile flag rate. It makes it quite tricky to work out. Some councils do still run on 3/4 mile flag rates. We're 1/2 mile, and other councils will vary nationally. There's quite a lot of inconsistency with that. And similarly, there's inconsistency with night rates and when they start. There's no blueprint necessarily for a tariff, and tariffs have tended to evolve over time in local authorities. And I've tried to, in the report, look at other local authorities' tariffs and provide a level of comparison. And you'll note in the report at Appendix C, there is a fair comparison table. Now in there is a list of other local authorities within Devon, our neighbouring authorities, and where we compare how we compare with them and how we compare with the national average. And you'll see there's a local ranking and a national ranking. That national ranking comes from the Private Hire and Taxi Monthly magazine, and they produce a 2-mile fare for every council which has taxi meters. You'll note that West Devon, for example, don't even have taxi meters within their vehicles, so they're an anomaly, hence why they're not included in the list. So at Appendix C, you'll see our position in local ranking is currently 8th, and the position in the national league table for North Devon Council is currently 170, and that's out of, I believe, 341 councils. In terms of our 2-mile fare, our 2-mile fare currently stands at £7.30. In terms of the review, obviously, as I said, our tariff was last reviewed 11th of July 2022. Lots of our near neighbours have now undertaken reviews. Torridge, by way of example, just this last month have undertaken their review. So you'll note the date of last fare rise 2025, their local ranking now being 1st. Position in National League table, they're 29th highest out of the total number of national authorities imposing maximum fares. So that provides some form of comparison. In our Hackney Carriage private hire licensing policy, we've got a number of areas where we cite reference to the tariff. And at 4.3, you'll note that the principles that we've put within our taxi policy of December 23, and we say that our tariff should be reasonable and fair to all stakeholders, proportionate with the locality, benchmark with other local authorities, justified, simple and easily calculated, designed with a view to practicality, in line with any best practice guidance, mathematically correct and capable of being entered onto a meter, structurally the same for vehicles of different seating capacity, and designed where possible to avoid deliberate or accidental overcharging. In terms of our vehicle and the fleet that we have, we've done some examination of the power. And you'll note that 70% of the taxis licensed here by North Devon Council are diesel powered. That's a slight change and a shift since the last report, largely due to increasing electric and hybrid petrol vehicles. So 87.8 were diesel when we last examined this. But obviously the majority of the fuel type of our trade is diesel, and you'll see in chart 1 there for the fuel breakdown. In terms of the tariff, obviously it covers motorised vehicles, but our tariff also covers anything that is non-motorised. We've got 1 horse and carriage operating in Ilfracombe, to be aware of, and so we need to make sure we include that. Obviously it's slightly different because it's more of a pleasure ride. It's not something that's going to be done for not essential journeys necessarily. So we do need to consider that making any recommendations for our changes. One area that the trade have made reference to is the percentage change from day rate to night rate. And what I've done at 420 is provide an example in a table of the percentage difference between day and night tariffs across some of our neighbouring authorities to give members a little bit of an idea of that. So Torridge was 50% from day to night, Teignbridge the same, East Devon 21%, Torbay Flag was 16 and the Running Mile 25, Plymouth 24 and 12 respectively, South Hams 18 and 50, and Exeter 21 and 27%. And so you'll see that really there's no standard methodology in terms of the difference from day and night. Historically, when we started to look at the tariff many years ago, the night rate was actually 100% of that on top of day. And there was quite some criticism when we reduced that quite substantially. But it's interesting now to note that drivers are saying that that is beginning even at 50% to affect the trade. Another area that the trade have made representation in respect of is waiting time. Waiting time is a time-based charge that's typically operational when a taxi speed drops below a certain threshold. I've looked at our tariff. I think it's probably in the region of 5 and 6 miles an hour, and we charge 0.25, so 25 pence per minute across the table, irrespective of the time of day. One representation cites that waiting time should be increased to £1 a minute, but at a minimum 50 pence, an increase for night and Sundays. Two other drivers detail that waiting time should be increased in line with inflation. If waiting time was increased accounting for a CPI increase, this would equate to 30 pence a minute, and if that was rounded to the nearest 10 pence. Charging 30 pence is marginally higher, but wouldn't be out of line with other authorities in Devon. And at table 5, just under 4.28, you'll see an approximate 1 minute equivalent across Devon. In terms of the workings, I think it's preferable to provide transparency for the public to say that in a minute. I noted that some authorities, Teambridge by way of example, have got 0.22 or 22 pence for 44 seconds, which actually is really hard if you're in a vehicle to work out whether you can charge the right amount. And actually waiting time is particularly complicated because obviously you don't know at what point the vehicle was going at a certain speed. So I think to provide absolute clarity, I would prefer to stick with a charge per minute in providing something that's easy to work out for the trade. In terms of resource implications, we would be faced with putting an advertisement in the newspaper, but there really are no additional resource implications. So this is largely about the position for taxi drivers and passengers rather than the council. And we have existing budget in respect of the tariff to put in a newspaper advertisement. There has been an announcement on VAT in the autumn budget, and it doesn't seem to impact taxi drivers. This is about vehicles that aren't hailed on the street or flagged down on the street, and it relates to a tour operators margin scheme, TOMS. It's a special VAT accounting scheme for tour operators, and they've changed the guidance on that, and it really relates to pre-booked journeys. So I did put that in the report applied for that consideration of a 20% VAT on taxi fares was a potential. It's in place, but I don't think it will affect the tariff in this way because it is for pre-book to put members in the picture with that regard. I guess the most important appendix of all is Appendix F, which has a number of the trade proposals in a table, and that table has 14 options, and I've put in there also the 2 mile national average and local average to provide a level of comparison. Our current tariff in yellow there at 9, existing North Devon Council, 11th of the 7th, 2022, is detailed, and alongside that I've tried to calculate some different options to give members an understanding of how that would look against local and national averages. So for example, at proposal 10, that would be in place, putting in place a 13.7% increase across the whole table. At 11, that's a 13% increase across just tariff 1 and 4, which would allow some change based on the representations about the day and night disparity. 12, 13.7% just on that flag rate only. And at 13.7% flag only, and I've rounded that up to the nearest 10 pence. It's worth saying that any change you do propose to make, we would really need to go to one of the taxi meter companies that provide the chips and just check that it's able to be put in the tariff, because the tariff works on a series of drops. So you have 10 or 20% drop, 10 pence drops for the mile that's broken down. So whatever we've come up with, it may look very marginally different when it's then entered into the taxi meter and we get an approval for the chip. So I'd like to be able to get a proposal, go to the company, check that they're happy with that and how it can be entered before we then go out for the person. So I was hoping to advertise something that wasn't then mechanically able to be entered into the taxi meter. You'll see in that appendix there, suggestion 1 to 8, taken some of the trade suggestions in the representations. So I think one of the very popular trade, the most popular trade representation, where 7 drivers have noted they didn't wish to see an increase in night rate, was a £3.50 flag. And so I plotted that, which again allows members to compare against the proposal, the existing tariff, and the CPI of 13.7% across the whole table, or on day and night rates. I don't believe there's any other areas in the report to go through, other than perhaps to go back to my recommendations. So at 2.1.1, my recommendation would be to instruct myself to undertake further informal consultation with the licensed trade on a specific proposal. Obviously, it's been some time since the trade were consulted. For example, members may wish to consider requesting consultation be undertaken on one of the options within Appendix F. Option 11 and 14 correlate to those CPI increases, Tariff 1, Tariff 4. And or on any additional proposals suggested during the meeting. It should then be borne in mind, obviously, they may need minor adjustment, as I alluded to. In undertaking the above consultation, members will need to consider whether to retain the current valet charge at £100. I would suggest that it does remain at £100. Whether to increase the fare for non-motorised vehicles from £2 to £2.40 a minute, which I would suggest is £2.40. Whether to suggest, whether to increase waiting time to 30 pence per minute, which I would suggest, and whether to continue including a fuel surcharge within the tariff, which again I would suggest, but I would suggest in line with the fact that the AA are no longer providing those road fuel prices, which are found now on government website, and you'll see them in Appendix B. I would suggest that instead that we have a surcharge of 10 pence be added to the fare when published government weekly road fuel price for ultra low sulphur diesel exceeds 1.75 per litre, and use that wording rather than rely on the Southwest average. 2.25, I've cited whether to include any additional extra charges to cover unexpected bank holidays. Whilst infrequent, these are currently uncatered for. A suggestion would be to propose 50 pence extra charge in the event of an extra public holiday being announced. And at 2.26, the timing of any further consultation advertisement in light of the potential for an autumn budget announcement on VAT, I think we can largely ignore that based on the comments on the position that I've alluded to earlier. It's quite a complicated area, as you've alluded to, and I think your opening, Councillor York, is very apt, in providing that fairness to both the trade and to the travelling public, who very much are dependent on taxis in this area because of the rural districts. This is not an easy task, and it is very much a balance, and I welcome any questions.
Okay. Any thoughts? Any questions?
Yeah, I think your last one, because yes.
Sorry, can you speak up for the
Sorry,
recording?
yeah, I think your last one, I think is unfair to increase anything, because the public are dependent on, especially the area we live, not Devon, and it's the most deprived area, and people are struggling so much, but the taxi drivers, you can have taxi, they're making money. They're going to London, 350, 400 pound charging, so they're making money. For the local people, I think it's a locally, useful. This is my opinion in that.
Through the chair, in the report, we have put some data in respect of earnings and annual pay within the district compared to that of our Devon neighbours. And you'll see at table 1417, North Devon is placed fifth, with a median gross annual pay 27,155. These are figures from the ONS. And similarly, table 2, median gross annual pay for a full-time based on place of residence. The other one's based on place of work. So place of residence, we're much lower down. So 1, 2, 3, 8, a median gross annual pay of 27,060. So that's relevant for members' consideration.
Well, I propose we take, so in terms of the recommendation, we should take them one at a time because they're all, or is it going to be necessarily one complete answer? So we'll just look at 2.1.1 at the moment, if that's all right, just about the, really, this is the table we need to be looking at, okay? Deciding which of those many options we feel is the best fit. Councillor Norman, did you have your hand page?
Yeah, just clarity quickly. Great report. You give lots of detail, too much sometimes, but but you only have to do it. A measure perhaps is sort of from the taxi side, you know, the viability for them. Have you had any complaints about lack of taxis at certain times of the day? Is it sufficient? You mentioned about night rate, day rate. I know that a lot of taxis do school runs, and I know a couple of years ago I was using a taxi, and just paying for it to extra. There's no taxis during the day. It'll keep at one time.
It's not money at night.
No, I'm not. Okay, but have you picked up any sort of shortage?
Yeah, I mean, we used to obviously limit the number of taxis based up until around 1996, I believe, and it's the Department for Transport best practice guidance not to impose limits on taxis for various reasons. I think I've alluded to that within the report and the paragraph provided from them. When that limitation was removed, we did a survey back then to look at the unmet demand in the area. But because we don't impose limits on taxis and the expense of a survey, then we don't do that routinely. So we are only open really to comments from passengers or the trade in terms of what it looks like that. We know from doing enforcement on the ranks that Barnstable taxis, there were a huge number of them, and probably there was too much demand. They would be all the way up Boutport Street from years ago. That is certainly not the case if you go into the town centre anymore in the evening. And there are reports that the school contracts are very lucrative and they do take drivers away from that day work, the core hailing or rank work. So we do know that there are a reduction of vehicles, but I can't provide any official figures in terms of that decline other than my own observation.
I think there was also some comments from the trade around, because of that disparity between the night and day rate, that a lot of drivers are choosing the night to go having at night because they can earn more money that way, and then there's a little bit of a drop off in the day. So we may want to look at reducing that gap potentially. Who was first? Councillor Biederman? I don't know. Who had the hand up first?
I've got my hand up. I'm not precious, Chair. I think Katie does a tremendous job with this, doesn't she?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, really, the amount of detail and it is a difficult balance to strike in it between sort of, you know, like Saeed said, you know, the people out there really struggling financially. We have young people out working on low wages, you know, that often does not cut public transport. But of course, if we don't get the pricing right, there'll be no taxis at all. So, you know, it is such a really difficult balance to strike. I think quite clear to me looking at this, we got it reasonably right. I mean, of course, the customer always want it cheaper, and the operator want to more. But you know, to my mind, I think we pretty much got it right, and I've got no real concerns with the report, to be honest. You know, we go out to consultation and see what comes back, really.
Well, I think that.
But I think with availability
Yeah.
of taxis, in my other hat with DCC hat on, I think I know why there's very limited value amount of taxis around in the morning, and that's the rates they're charging to get children to and from school, which is, to be honest with you, is it's just pure profiteering out of children that have disabilities, etc. But it's staggering. So I know, and I think the reason the council had to pay that is the lack of availability in securing those contracts. And I think that probably is where we're struggling during the day. And you know, when you see them getting 50-60 pounds for taking somebody 4 or 5 miles, I can see why they might not be too interested in getting somebody from the train station to the town centre. But yeah, we are where we are now, and I think you know, to me, Chair, I would support these recommendations. And
Well, the recommendation is that we actually review the price, because that yellow line is the existing, and they haven't had an increase for 2 years. Or is it over 2 years?
well, 2022 wasn't it? So it's 3 years.
3 years, actually, yeah. So,
And this will be for 2026. So I guess by the time it comes in, it should work really quick.
Advertisement. It depends if you would like to go for informal advertisement, which I think would be sensible, to go back to the trade with a very limited 1 or 2 proposals. We go back for informal consultation, which would be done in January, allow for a period of perhaps 3 weeks before we then.
it's a minimum of 2, isn't it? Yeah.
Then go after the formal
Yeah.
advertisement. After a meeting, then it'd be probably February.
Sorry, before I come to you, Councillor Quinn, there is obviously Torridge have just increased theirs incredibly high. And I think essentially they could be shooting themselves in the foot, because if people can't afford it, there won't be enough trade. So they'll have to bring their prices back down. I'm not sure we want to go as high as that. That would be my opinion. I think that sounds very high.
Situation, if you do go too high, is you end up with passengers, in essence, bartering on the round. That doesn't aid for professional service. We will have a level of variation. We don't have a fleet of standardised livery vehicles. We have smaller vehicles, we've got multi-seater vehicles, we've got some prestige vehicles, and you can't take away the ability for a family to say, actually, we'll take the bigger vehicle because we can get in together, or, you know, that seems sensible. But what we wouldn't want to do is put the price so high that you end up with people bartering. And we did have that many years ago, and you did have a lot of negotiation on the rank. And I think that doesn't aid for professional service.
Okay, Councillor Quinn.
It's, this first one that we're going to talk about now, that you've got the local average for a 2 mile tariff, 787, and the 14 proposal, which is one of the 780, is below the local average. So I think that's if we've got to choose one, and fabulous presentation and all that work's gone into it. Crikey. But these figures are sort of rolling in your head, and you've got all the others. This is the one that we had to choose, really. Just give us 2 choices that you're recommending us, we choose from one or the other.
There's a trade suggestion at 2, option 2, that's not far removed from the 13.7% CPI. I think when we did this last time, we utilised the CPI, and it made for a sensible manner to review the tariff, because it was very clear what it was, and we weren't getting into then conversations about the cost of tyres, the cost of insurance, the cost of other things, because we gained our benchmark tariff and then we increased it by set percentage based on the true figure for that inflationary period. So I felt that was helpful, but it doesn't mean to say that we can't take into consideration some of the other trade suggestions. But the CPI is a useful methodology, because we can clearly say that in that interim period from 11th of July 2022 to the date when that CPI figure is now available. The closest one, I think, September, that it was the 13.7% that's within the report. So it provides a good benchmark.
Can I tell you some of, sorry, go on.
One bit, sorry, so.
Yeah.
14 is pretty good, but anyway, that's my point of view. And
Yeah.
the other one, talking about the lack of taxis here and there. I'm sure in the training we've done or whatever, it was pointed out that when a taxi company comes to renew its license or ask for a license, if there's a few, we can stipulate that they would have to have a certain amount of taxis running at certain times. We can say you need to have a taxi running till midnight. If Ilfracombe, you have to have part of your license says you've got to supply that, or you've got to have so many taxis of your fleet working through the day, so many at night. Is that right? I'm pretty sure I remember seeing that, because I'm thinking, well, next time they review, I'd like to be on talking about that, because it's so frustrating when I was a publican in Ilfracombe, no longer, but so frustrating when there was one on a Saturday night, taxi seemingly one, running about. You ring the numbers, 7 different numbers, it all goes through to the same taxi because it's been diverted to him. One taxi. And people are there, I need to get to Coombe Martin at 11:30 at night. I want to shut the door. And they're like, I can't get a taxi. Is that right that we can say when you renew, right, well, the new stipulation is we need you to have 2 taxis on a Friday and Saturday night running until 12 or 1 or whatever. I'm sure I've seen that.
There's two forms of operation. So you've got a true taxi, hackney carriage, which is linked back to the Tampines clauses at 1847, the old horse-drawn carriage. And to be fair, the legislation's not moved much further on. And where we talk about some of the offences, it still talks about taking the horse back to the stable. So you have to read that, very dated. And I don't think we've got much more dated than 1847 in terms of our legislation. You have to read that and translate it into a modern world. And then you've got the private hire legislation, which was the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 1976, which relates to private hire vehicles and private hire operators. So I'm not sure if the training or there's something to do with the operators and making available a certain number of vehicles rather than the hackney carriage, because you can certainly be a sole driver having your own vehicle, and then if you've done a contract in the day or worked in the day, physically you wouldn't be able to work in the evening because of other sort of working time obligations and so on and so forth. So whether that was something from private hire operators. Now we have fewer private hire operators than many other sort of metropolitan areas. We don't have a large number of private hire operators in this district, but that may be something that other councils have explored, but something that we've never explored here. You can put conditions on any licence for private hire operator or private hire vehicle, or driver. So maybe that's something how they've done that from a local discretion perspective, but I've not seen that or ever looked at the benefits or disadvantages of doing that. And from the point of the taxis, then, as I said, you've got one driver having one vehicle that's quite legitimate.
Okay. I just thought, I know,
Yeah.
I have seen it in the training.
Yeah. That's something that would be where there's a fleet, wouldn't it? Where that fleet office would say, we'll have taxis out covering all these times. But as an individual driver who's basically self-employed and wants to work the hours they want to work,
Yeah.
I can't see there being an obligation to work for the council to say they have to work certain hours. But that might be, I think it's a separate issue, but
With a taxi
yeah.
company doing 6 cars and
Yeah.
relicensing, we could say, well, of your 6 cars, we would like you as a condition, 2 of them,
Mm.
Friday night and Saturday night, be available for hire,
Yeah.
or happy to
Yeah.
carriage system until whatever time.
Mm.
It's just crossed my mind when I remember seeing it and thinking, well, when it comes up,
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because if there is demand, then they'll probably do it. But if there isn't, if it's sporadic, And most of the time they're sitting there doing nothing. It's difficult to gauge. So yeah, I presume they're covering like Saturday, Fridays and Saturdays and things like that. So one thought I had was was around the fact that the fuel prices have gone down quite considerably, whether we choose an option where the running mile is at the same rate as it is now, and we just look at increasing the flag rate, and that would be around, well, number 2, I think was one. And then I've also starred number 3, number 13 and number 14. Now, the difference with tariff 1 4 is that they are the day rate ones only. They are the ones where we're not changing the evening rate, which will bring them closer together, which is something we would probably want to do, because like I say, a lot of the trade are saying, oh, the evening drivers are getting all the work, or they're just only working in the evening. So that might bring a few more out in the day. So that would be my thought, my suggestion potentially. Councillor Biederman?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't disagree. I'm trying to think, we had a long debate 3 years ago about this evening rate, and what was the reasoning why we, there was a reason why we brought it back to 9 o'clock, wasn't there? And I library can't remember, but I know there was it's like always, isn't there? There's always a reason why we did something.
I think there was a representation, Councillor Yorkin, from the trade, or a number of representations that other councils' night rate was starting earlier, and then we benchmarked across Devon, and we went for something. There was some began earlier, some later, and we used that because of trade representation.
Yeah.
There certainly was no customer representation.
No, they wouldn't want that, would they?
In terms of your comment on flag rates and putting the flag only, then that does set the increase. As soon as you put money on the running mile, you very quickly, after 2, 10, 15 miles, you start making a substantial difference in a 10-mile journey.
Yes.
And any trade suggestion that puts quite a significant amount on running mile tariff, trade option 1, by way of example, running mile £3.50, you can see what £3.50 does to a 10-mile journey. That turns a 10-mile journey to £36.75 in a day, as opposed to £29, which is the current 10-mile journey. So you can see what difference that makes over a very short period.
Trying to find, have we got?
Yeah, having
Yeah.
dealt with the taxi trade quite a few years, and we're going to have to go into consultation, whatever happens.
Yes.
And whatever we put out to consultation, they'll want more. So I personally be looking at the
Well,
you
that's
know,
right.
we've got to think about the public.
Mm.
Just about to say something I didn't want to say in a public meeting, but we've got to think about the public, and I think, you know, it's just getting that. I wouldn't be going out to them too high. I
No.
think I would be going out to them, you know, because like I say that, and it's a £7 rise overnight on a 10-mile journey. You know, that's a, you know, those people that are working and using taxis are also getting impacted all the time, aren't they? You know, the cost of living of everybody working class is incredible,
Yeah.
including taxi drivers. So it's, like I say, back to that balance, but I don't think I would be going to the trade too high a
No, I agree.
offer, because I suspect there'll be a bun fight.
If you were minded to solely look at the flag rate only rather than the running mile, and you were mindful of the disparity between day and night, option 14 provides, as you say, 13.7% on that flag only,
Yeah.
and on tariff 1 and 4 only. So it's that the day normal size vehicle and a day for a multi-seater vehicle. Nothing on the night road and nothing on the running mile.
And I think also I may be wanting to add another recommendation that we review the fares religiously every 2 years, so that there isn't this huge this need for this huge increase when we get around to it. I think maybe even annually. I don't know whether annually or biannually would be better, or twice a year. No, sorry, not twice a year, every 2 years would be better.
Once a year or twice a year would be very difficult, largely because of the mechanism thereafter. So
Yeah.
as soon as they're advertised,
Yes.
then taxi drivers then will go to their meter agents seeking an update to the chip that's entered into the meter. So that will cost them.
I see, right.
And then they have to present their vehicle to us for a meter test, which is currently £29, which again will cost them money. And in addition to that, in terms of the resource with our skeleton team currently, we would find it really hard to meter test because we have,
Yeah.
you know, a significant number of vehicles
Yeah.
that would want to come forward,
Mhm.
and then we have to go out and travel that distance and
Yeah.
seal them. Either done by way of plastic plug within the meter itself. A lot of them used to be like a lead, so you would put a wire through lead, crimp the lead,
I see.
and a lot of them are inbuilt now into the mirror view meters, and some you can't seal, some stick it over. So yeah, we have to then check that to see that the flag rate is correct, so it doesn't go over the £3.10 and half a mile, and B, that the extras button isn't programmed to, you know, a pound, it's 10 pence, 20 pence, or whatever we've set, and C, the fact that you can't, it's a calendar controlled meeting, you can't flip it multi-seater from tariff 1 to tariff 4, or, you know, if it's a normal car, or, you know, those kind of mechanisms are okay within the meter, so it creates quite a significant peak demand after the advert's gone out, and then we put that notice to drivers that they can come in and get their meters tested.
So would you say then that every 2 years is a reasonable amount of time?
Yes.
And bearing in mind, you know, they don't have the ability to, you know, we are being sort of like, you know, payroll, if you like, aren't we? So that would be their only way of getting sort of an increased salary. Councillor Biederman.
Yeah, there is a hell of a lot of work that goes in, obviously into people repairing it, but then there is the cost and the trade. I'd be reluctant to change it, to be honest. I think, you know, you've got that safeguard with if we get a fuel, you know, where the fuel goes up by a certain amount, we can do the extra 10p. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
75 a litre, but it's down at 140 something now.
I get what you're saying. I just think it is a lot of work, and you've not been called to pay Peter potentially if they've got all this extra expense themselves and time to get their meters redone, retested.
But the trade themselves, they are asking for it mostly, not all, but mostly they're asking for it because that's their only way of increasing their income. So, I mean, we could do it every 2 years, every 3 years. I'm just thinking again for passengers, you know, if there is a 3-4 year gap, then there's a huge jump in prices rather than.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, in normal times, I would, anything normal. Not I'm saying taxis aren't normal, but you know, it's not as simple as like in a shop, you put your price in, or in the pub, you put your pint up temporary. And, you know, with taxis, it's, you know, it is about doing all that work with the meters, the advertising and the opposite side. It just seems to be an awful lot of ducks to line up.
The other thing I've just thought of running lines with the community safety element is that now Ilfracombe and Bideford are getting night buses, aren't they, on the weekends? So at a £3 rate, obviously taxis are losing out there as well. So, you know, that is a night, but that is a night rate, which we weren't necessarily going to be increasing, but there is just an element there to think about as well. Councillor Leatherby.
Can I say, brilliant report. Can we, when we're looking at it, I like the idea of rounding the figures off as well. So not having 2p, 4p's and stuff like that. And I'm liking 2 and 13, like you kind of said as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant report.
Yeah, sorry.
So,
Yeah.
lovely. Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, obviously thinking that far ahead, we know that in 2027, this council won't exist. So I'm wondering if we're just discussing things when North Devon District Council won't exist, and it's something for the new reorganisation to look at. You know, we've got 18 months to 2 years. You know, do we need to be spending time actually looking at that at the moment? We can look at the fares, that's absolutely fine. But for how long, you know, to review I don't think we need to be looking
We're
at it
not
now.
even 100% sure that this is even, the LGR is even actually going to happen. The government, you know what the government's like, they do change their mind
Yeah,
quite a lot. In 2027, we will still exist, but there will be also be a shadow council. And also there's that vague possibility that taxi licensing will be moving to the county council. That's been hanging over us for a number of years as well. So we just don't know. So I think we just go as business as usual, put the things in place that we want to put in place, and then it will change when it naturally changes.
Yeah. And I think that was my point, that we're discussing
Yeah.
something that may not, you know,
Yeah.
may not be possible,
Yeah.
and
But-
things were in for change.
But the
So,
shadow government may want to run with what
it's,
we
it's all
anyway,
maze, and I
because
think
there's a lot of change going to happen across the whole.
For
Council
information on that
landscape.
vein, Councillor York, I noticed that in the league table, Carrick, for example, which is a previous Cornwall authority, still have their tariff. They still have their own policy, and so I mean, how many years ago did Cornwall go to neutral? It's a long time ago. They're still running on their separate area tariffs, which is very interesting.
Right. Yes, councillor Haggsbooth.
I wonder if we could put more than one option out to consultation.
Yeah.
Seems very hard to choose between.
Okay, that's a pretty fair idea, yeah. That's very reasonable, yeah. Yeah. So they might pick the lesser of the two evils, won't they? Councillor Biederman, did you want to say something else because you were?
Well, I was looking at your fingers and I was looking at number 4 really, and I think like stage number 4.
14. I didn't say number 4.
I was looking at line 4 on appendix F. Because this is what all these are what trade have put forward, aren't they?
Councillor Biederman, so you've got from that yellow number 9, they're all based on CPI. They're not the trade ones. To the left hand side of that, they were the trade ones.
It just seems from the trade, number 4 looks close, as I would just like say not the flag rate and the running mile down 20, I would say £4, because that's quite an increase. Isn't it? You have a £4 flag rate and a £3 running mile.
I think all the other options, I said 2, 3.
Flag rates,
13,
like you say, the
14.
flag rate
Yeah.
doesn't affect the customer. So, yeah, but it's just one-off payment, and you don't get punished either for travelling. You're travelling a long way, and it might encourage people to walk a bit if they're able. If it is a very short journey. That's what I mean. I mean, to me, I'm somewhere there, but as Mark has said, I say Councillor Hayworth Booth has said the 2 options is probably sensible.
Yeah. On that note, then, can I ask Councillor Hayworth Booth whether he has any 2 preferable options?
I don't have.
No.
Katie, you deal with them, sorry for you, Chair.
Yeah.
Katie deals with them all the time. I think, I would be led by Katie a bit on what she would suggest, to be honest.
The other option, Chair, is that you put out the trade proposal that was most popular alongside
Yeah.
the 14.
Yeah. So we're looking at number 2 and number 14. Any objections to that proposal?
I think,
Yeah.
I'll propose that if you want to propose that.
Yeah, yeah.
Do I have a seconder for that? Okay, let's vote on then 2 and 14 as options to go forward for consultation. 4. Lovely. Thank you. Right, that's the first one. Now we've got 2.2.1, which is whether to retain the current valet charge at £100 in line with comments in paragraph 4.24.
Was it 4.2?
4. 76.
So that's on page 24.
Yeah.
I ask if anyone how frequently or how much does it cost to clean a car? How frequently is it needed?
The trade have come back and said It's very hard to get these costs back.
Yeah.
People don't pay it, therefore there's a level of unenforceability to charge. And in terms of charge, sure if I have related.
Yeah, I would have thought that's about right, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels right,
Look
doesn't
at
it?
what everybody else, look
Yeah.
at the others. I mean, like I say, I think we all immediately think of drunk people, don't we? But
Yeah.
unfortunately, children and you know, there's not always drunk people. is there?
If it's hard to get £100 out of people, is it possible we could reduce it? So it makes it more realistic.
Remember, it's a maximum fare.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Oh,
in
okay.
essence, if the driver wished to negotiate something lower, then you could do.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, if somebody's drunk, it's all fair game in it. If,
Yeah.
you know, the poor child sick. Yeah,
Well, we minded to keep it the same then.
yeah, I would say, yeah.
If I have a proposal, obviously, to councillor Biederman.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we're going to second that. All those in favour? No, thank you. That's unanimous. 2.2.2, whether to increase the fare for non-motorised vehicles from £2 to £2.40 a minute, resultant tariff if relevant CPI increase is applied and the tariff is rounded up to the nearest 10 pence, suggested £2.40 for our horse and carriage in Ilfracombe. I think that's a fair amount, our Ilfracombe people. Yeah.
The consultation would also go to this particular operator, and
Yeah.
I'm sure she would come back.
Appreciate that.
Particularly
Yeah,
in terms of any comments on it,
Okay.
for you to consider next
Yeah.
time.
and she doesn't feel she's pricing herself out.
We can ask that
Yeah.
of her. in the
Yeah, okay.
consultation. Yeah.
Okay, so do I have a proposal for £2.40? Thank you, councillor Hayward Booth, seconder, councillor Quinn. All those in favour? Everyone? Yeah. 2.2.3, whether to increase waiting time from 25 pence per minute in line with comments at paragraph 4.2.8, suggested is 30 pence per minute.
That relate in an hour, sorry.
A lot of money.
I'm not sure.
And then was it paying?
Where's 2.2?
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
I was trying. Yeah, yeah, it was 25p and then was 30. It was 25p.
£18 now.
18 pence.
That done, what, is that for 25p? 30p? £18 an hour?
Yeah.
I think that's quite reasonable, isn't it, really?
Absolutely, yeah.
Somebody, yes.
You can't
Happy to
really
move
more
to-
than that.
Yes, to the 30p.
Yeah, okay, so I have a seconder.
Yeah.
No.
Being a publican, people waiting for,
Yeah.
saying goodbye to people.
Exactly.
It's waiting,
Yeah,
making it
waiting,
long. I'd put it £1 a minute personally, but we're not. 30p.
A technical question on that, where it says where it goes below 5 to 6 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Presumably the meter works that out for itself. You haven't got the taxi going, oh God, it's now 5 miles an hour, and oh no, now I'm drunk again, you know.
It's like a threshold within it.
Right.
So it works out whether the taxi driver will gain more money from the waiting time as opposed to the travelling
Yeah.
time.
Yes.
And that roughly works out
I
between
see.
5 and 6 miles an
Yeah.
hour, where it will flip from one to the other.
Yeah.
I think what I was trying to get at is it is not solely when that vehicle is stationary.
No,
It can be travelling
road
and
slowly as well,
either
in traffic or something. Yeah, yeah. Okay, right, so councillor Biederman posed that one. Councillor Can, did you or not? I thought you did.
I'm still happy, I think. I just realised, I was thinking of like Councillor Quinn, people messing them around and sat outside a shop or a pub.
Not
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
solely to do with that. It can be when they're in traffic situations and crawling along traffic.
But then, like I say, that if they're making £18 an hour when they're doing that,
Sorry.
they can't work, can they? And you know, they can't, like I say, we get frustrated when we're stuck in traffic. You can't expect to, you know, that is their livelihood. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy that.
Yeah, okay, so it was councillor Quinn, wasn't it, that recommended? Was it? Yeah,
Yes.
and you've got a question as well? No, you just put your hand up for that. Councillor Can seconded.
Yeah.
So all those in favour of 30 pence a mile, standing mile? Yep, Right, 2.2.4. Whether to continue including a fuel surcharge within the tariff. If so, it will be a necessity to amend its current wording to reflect South West average fuel oil prices being unavailable. Suggested amend wording to a surcharge of 10 pence will be added to the fare when published government weekly road fuel price for ultra low sulfur diesel exceeds £1.75 per litre, with a further 10p added for each subsequent increase of 10p per litre. Councillor Biederman.
Yeah, I'll move that we go along with this as and the suggested wording. I'd never ever want to go back through what we had to go through several years ago, Katie, when we had the fuel dump,
Yeah.
because it was, took a lot of time. So I think it is, hopefully we'll never ever need to use this. But
In our lifetime,
taken
yeah.
a lot of time, thinking it.
Second, councillor Quinn. And all those in favour? Okay, 2.2.5. Whether to include any additional extras charge to cover unexpected bank holidays. Whilst infrequent these are currently uncatered for, the suggestion would be to propose a 50 pence extra charge in the event of an extra public holiday being announced in the life of the tariff, with the additional charge being added to the meter for each hiring on a new public holiday. This would be presumably things like coronations and things like that. Yeah.
Can I just ask, is this 50p to the flag rate or?
Just there'd be a 50 pence chair on the journey total, so just 150 pence.
150 pence. So again, every price is normal,
Yeah.
or on a bank holiday or a special occasion, it's £10 you charge plus 50p because it's bank holiday.
Yes, and this is only for the unexpected bank holiday because the tariff in existence has a bank holiday and Christmas charge already built into
Built
it.
in, yeah, so it's an extra one.
It's a surprise.
Yeah.
So it's that rate plus 50p.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we went
So it's extra.
when we went World Cup next summer and they called it
They give us a bank holiday.
bank holiday.
I don't blame them, because no one's really going to want a taxi when that's on.
Yeah, right, okay.
Okay. Do anyone minded to propose that?
Yes.
Okay, and that's Councillor Hayden Booth and the seconder, Councillor Quinn. All those in favour? Thank you. Timing, sorry, 2.2.6, the timing of any further consultation stroke advertisement in the light of the potential for an autumn budget announcement on VAT on taxi journeys as outlined in paragraph 5.4. That, we ignore that one, can't we? And then I wanted to add my one in, didn't I, about when we review the fares again. Right, my suggestion was 2 yearly. Any other thoughts on that? I know we discussed it. But do I have a seconder for that? Okay, Councillor Ledby. Any further thoughts?
Chair, I'm happy to support. I just wanted to check on the cost of advertising and things.
And it'd be a newspaper advertisement for the council solely, so it would be fun. It would cope with the budget.
Yeah. Okay, so all those in favour then, please. Very much. Right, is that item done? Is that it? Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Thank you so much for your report, Katie. Really clear.
It's
We'll put a lot of work into that one. In. Okay, item 7 then, CSP update, antisocial behaviour and hate crime, pages 59 to 62 of your agenda, report by Community Safety Officer Tim Birtwistle. Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you, Chair. Before I continue, I'd like to introduce our new Community Safety Sergeant, Donna Money, sitting next to me. Replacing Kevin, who was with us for 2 or 3 years. Donna, do you want to say a couple of words? Or?
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, good morning, everyone. I've taken over from Sergeant Connor, which I know most of you probably know. He's done some fantastic work, worked really closely with everyone. And I really hope to kind of continue that work with you all, really. I've only been in the role for 4 weeks, so there's going to be a lot of questions that I'm not going to be able to give you straight off the bat, but I will find the answers and come back to you. And yeah, look forward to working with you all.
And I think it's really good for the partnership, although Kevin did some excellent work, just to have that fresh pair of eyes, just to bring some new impetus to the partnership is always useful. Thank you. Yeah, so today we're going to talk about, Kate's going to talk a little bit about antisocial behaviour, the current situation of antisocial behaviour in our district. And then we will move on to hate crime, which is a follow-up to our last appearance, which I think was in June. Yeah, so we'll provide some figures. So
Yeah. Okay.
So just an update really this year. So the partnership been quite proactive on tackling some of the street related antisocial behaviour in and around Barnsley and Ilfracombe. We've issued 36 community protection warning letters, 20 community protection notices. Hannah and I've attended court on a number of occasions and taken a number of individuals to court for prosecutions for breaching those notices. We've had some criminal behaviour orders granted through the court for a couple of the Ilfracombe street drinkers, which has had a positive impact to make a difference. The police have also applied for some criminal behaviour orders through the court to tackle some of the sort of criminal behaviour in town, shoplifting and wider antisocial behaviour. In fact, one was granted last week for 8 years on an individual, which was, quite positive, and 5 years for another individual that was a prolific shoplifter, both prolific shoplifters in Barnstaple, preventing them from entering stores for that period of time in North Devon. So that's really positive. In relation to sort of hotspot areas of antisocial behaviour that has been an issue this year so far is Paternoster Row on Church Walk area has been a significant problem due to kind of lack of visibility in relation to the CCTV cameras there. But now autumn has happened and the leaves have fallen off, so that has made it much easier. The trees are going to be cut back over the winter period, which is positive. Hannah did have look at some additional funding for an extra camera there. But I think the positive court action we've taken on a couple of the individuals that are causing issues there, that's made a significant difference in the last 6 weeks. In fact, the problem's completely disappeared. The drinkers aren't gathering there and it's significantly improved. Town centre has become much quieter in the last couple of months. Obviously, the weather has had an impact on that. But equally, we've had a criminal behaviour order granted for one of our sort of prolific street drinkers in town a couple of months ago, so that's really positive. We had some issues at the beginning of the year with a lot of youths causing antisocial behaviour in and around Barnstaple. So Lucy Robinson and I issued a number of warning letters with parents in attendance, and the police applied for 2 civil injunctions on 2 youths that were causing these significant issues. That has had a positive impact, and those issues have reduced significantly in town. It's much quieter. In Ilfracombe, there are still ongoing issues with street drinkers there. That is kind of work that's ongoing with the council. We have a number of people on notices and criminal behaviour orders, and the street marshals that are out there regularly, as am I, trying to address those wider issues there. I think some of the frustrations that Hannah and I have, I don't know if you want to add anything, Hannah, is it's really difficult when you prosecute street drinkers, because the magistrates are very limited on the disposals they have to deal with individuals that have addiction issues, and that's always a problem for us, because breach of public spaces protection order and community protection native visit is a fine or a criminal behaviour order. So a fine has limited impact on an individual that doesn't have money anyway. It's particularly people that are homeless, so they have no means anyway. So we have increased our applications for criminal behaviour orders because they do have a power of arrest attached to them, and the courts do deal with breach of criminal behaviour orders much more robustly. In fact, there's a number of individuals in prison at the moment for breaching criminal behaviour orders. So it does have a better outcome for the community. address those issues. I know that attending the street scene meeting last week with Hannah Harrington and Jess Boy from the Panmure Market is that they are potentially considering a public spaces protection order to address some of the issues of driving on the Strand. I think that's been a big problem for a few years. But that is in the early stages of discussion. It's not gone out for consultation. It's kind of working and is drafting potential paperwork up for that. Because people are driving down on the Strand after the hours that they should do, and it's causing a risk to pedestrians even in that area. And we are limited at the moment on how that can be dealt with. Yeah, I don't know if there's any other questions or anything else you want to add, Hannah, in relation to any.
If I could just say, sorry, I was a couple of minutes late.
Okay.
That probably noted. And yes, so just to follow up on what Kate said, it's obviously quite a difficult thing when you're in front of the magistrates to explain that you're asking for the maximum or a punitive fine when we're saying that they're alcohol dependent or drug dependent, and they have been under the influence and been aggressive or caused an issue in the community. But they are also have clear health issues, and it's where do they go to? They don't have a home, or if they have somewhere that they can be, they're not allowed to partake in those venues. So it's also that the magistrates take some persuasion to address the issues when faced with those set of circumstances. And I think Kate does a brilliant job, so she needs to be commended. So, but it is hard.
Councillor Biederman.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Kate, it's unbelievable what you do, and I fully support the idea of absolutely pointless issuing fines and so the sorry, I've forgotten the name of criminal
behaviour order.
Yeah, the criminal behaviour order. Is there any? I mean, I can remember back in the day when you read in the paper, and there'd be an order that you undertook, treatment, because obviously what we really want is to give them help, support to battle their addiction. Is there any way of, because I mean, I know that the help's there if they will accept it. So is there any way through that criminal route that you can enforce them to take the help?
Yes, okay, yes, there is. Via the criminal behaviour order, you can force them to attend, and that can be part of a criminal behaviour order, but also be aware that if they then default or do not attend to a support group, then potentially they are in breach of their criminal behaviour order, and that's imprisonable. So,
that's good to know, really, because I think, like you say, I mean, none of us know when we really need help, do we? Not every time get told, but like you say, it's pointless issuing fines, and it's almost pointless putting them in prison, really, if they're not getting that support and help. Because ultimately, I mean, we absolutely have to crack this, because confidence in the town centre, people visiting them and using it. I've seen it a couple of incidents. And that's off to the police and yourselves and the street marshals, because they do a tremendous job under very trying circumstances. But it's bad for them. But for members of the public to have to witness it, it's pretty awful, and it puts them off coming back. So yeah, it's important.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I think we have had multiple conversations with the Together in Drug and Alcohol Services, and it's quite difficult in relation to putting conditions on engagement, because their engagement is voluntary, and they want people to be ready for treatment, to be ready to address their addiction issues, and it's difficult for them to be willing to be on board with a legal requirement to engage with the services, because they want that person to be ready at the time to address their addiction issues. It is a difficult balance, but we have considered that before for individuals. But fines do have some impact on some people. People And that has worked quite a lot in Paternoster Row, when you have individuals that do have an income or do have high amount of benefits that can pay a fine, that has stopped the behaviour, because they don't want another fine, because they you know, that's quite a hefty fine for 1 can of alcohol. So, you know, it is very helpful having the option of a fixed penalty notice in some circumstances, and I think that's why the council in North Devon have led as a partnership on most of the community protection warning and notices, because we can issue the fines. In other areas, the police issue their own warning letters and notices, but they only have the option of court prosecution. So I think in some cases it is useful having the option to fine people.
Just come back on the Strand. So if I'm reading that or listening properly, that's because the police haven't got the time or resource to enforce it. Is that right?
I think it would give the option for officers, wider officers, to have the delegations to be able to assist the police when they're not available, to be able to enforce it, because we have, you know, the street marshals in town, we have the civil enforcement officers, we have myself, that we could have the delegations to assist during those daytime hours.
Well, I mean, I always remember the vision for the Strand, and that sort of, it was going to be a cafe culture, you know, all the rest of it. And, you know, and then you look at the gridlock all around the town at the time. And unfortunately, you know, sort of on from what we're just talking about, often incidents on the new bridge, you know, a bit like, you know, we're using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Needs to be a bit of common sense, you know, and I personally wonder if that, you know, that idea of closing the Strand off, you know, to me, we either need to make it a cafe culture and that space, or we open it back up and let traffic use it, because, you know, like you say, you know, pretty much everyone's using it. There's pretty much enforcement, you know, what's the right way to go with it? You know, it frustrates me really. I think, like I say, there are going to be times where we need to open it up because of the bridge, and there doesn't seem to be any clear sort of, what's the word for it? You know, it doesn't seem any clear what happens when the bridge is closed. You know, does that immediately then drop the restriction on the use of the Strand? Because you quite clearly need to do it. You know, as soon as that bridge closes, the whole town gridlocks in minutes.
Yeah, like yesterday.
And people need to be able to, you know, get about their business. So, yeah, I'm a bit nervous about that. That's all I'm saying, really.
So before I just come to you two, I've got a question about access there if it is closed, in terms of places like the Bridge Trust, bearing in mind they're going to be needing disabled drop-offs when they open their performing arts centre. You've got businesses running there, obviously they're going to need deliveries, and also just general disabled access. And also, my secondary question is, on Friday, we've got another Barnsley Place partnership meeting. Is this on the agenda for that? I haven't double checked that agenda yet.
No, it's very early stages at the
Right,
moment. So
okay.
Hannah has spoken with Darren, and
Right.
she will be putting
She
something
might get
together.
a report perhaps on Friday.
Yeah, not for Friday.
Oh,
It's
okay.
early stages.
Oh,
It was
okay.
a discussion at the street scene
Right,
meeting last
okay.
week, so it's very early stages yet. It's not anywhere
Yeah.
near a
Yeah.
proposal, because it has, you know, they have to consider many
Yeah.
different factors for
So
that.
access would be my concern if
Yeah,
you're blocking
of
it off,
course.
obviously. I think Councillor Can was next, and then I'll come to Councillor Hayward Booth.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point, obviously, that, you know, the team are working extremely hard and, you know, dealing with a lot of the antisocial behaviour. And it's good to see in the local media that certain members that are reoffending. In fact, there was one last week, and hopefully a short prison sentence will sort him out. But it all seems to stop at 5 o'clock or from Monday to Friday. The street marshals do an incredible job, and I can only, you know, so see them out there, and that really has made a difference in the high street. But obviously they finish at a certain time on the Saturday. Everybody else finishes 5 o'clock, Monday to Friday. And it all seems to maybe kick off in the town. Lack of TVs, I think, in certain areas. So I'm pleased to see maybe that we can put some more TVs in certain areas of the town. But also in amongst that, we do experience a lot of antisocial behaviour out in the rural areas. And as much as we focus on the town, you know, I'm local councillor for Bickington and Flemington, it is happening there as well. So we mustn't really push it to one side and think, oh, it doesn't, you know, it happens in Rownsville, it's happening in
Sorry,
Flemington. And
Sorry, I'm gonna have to jump in. I'm not aware of any antisocial behaviour in Flemington in recent times.
well, in recent years, but I mean, I think we get it over in Rownsville and you know, which is my ward. But what I'm saying is, I don't think we should forget that it does
No, of
happen
course not.
in rural areas, but you haven't got the manpower maybe to you know, to keep an eye on it. But you know, I think the figures of the antisocial behaviour, especially in young people, is quite alarming. You know, I don't know that you're going to tackle all of it, but I think you're doing the best that you can.
I do deal with antisocial behaviour in the wider area outside of Barnstable, but that's led on complaints that come into the council and equally reports that are made to the police. So I would encourage, you know, residents to report those matters in to the council, and then we will investigate accordingly, and I'll work alongside the police and the housing associations if it's a social housing property to
So
investigate.
what happens, you know, in those hours, as I said, it seems to all stop at 5, 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And nothing at the weekends, and that's you know, I am in it.
Hours a day, so you know.
Yeah,
the police
I'm in the town a fair bit,
Yeah.
and it just seems, oh, everybody's gone home, and you know, but the more TVs would really, I think, help.
If
in the
there are
town.
individuals on warning letters and notices and they are on conditions regarding certain behaviours, then CCTV do provide me with evidence if those individuals are causing problems in the evenings when there's no street marshals in and no, you know, council officers available. So I do get that evidence via CCTV, and I'm guessing the police rely on that evidence as well in relation to any other individuals causing issues, so we can review that evidence and deal with them robustly.
I think as well, it's a really key thing, as you've mentioned now, I myself lived in Roundbell for a very long time until very recently. It's also important to remember the difference between the legacy of harm that's been caused because of the amount of antisocial behaviour caused by these individuals, which, as Kate alluded to, you know, the fact that we've introduced antisocial behaviour injunctions on 2 children, they have desisted for the entire amount of time that they have been on those orders. Now, it's not Minority Report. I can't say that they won't potentially offend once these orders expire, but I think there's also our job as a kind of representatives of the community is to reassure that the harm that they felt maybe a year ago from witnessing an incident is absolutely valid, but that harm may not be continuing, and it may be that they just haven't happened to be in the area and seen the changes because they have been fearful from what they've seen or experienced before. So it's just to offer that reassurance that certainly with the local neighbourhood teams, that 24-hour cover, they are there. We definitely encourage people to report it, council, police, everyone, because if we know about it, we can start building that picture and direct our resources to the highest harm areas. But it's also about just going back to the public and say, look, I know that area, perhaps historically, even 6 months ago, was an area you would have avoided. Please rest assured that through your reports, we have funneled as a community partnership our resources there. And should you go back there again, perhaps tomorrow, you would hopefully find it a much changed picture. So I think that's our hope, is just send that message back where we can.
Yeah. And I think it's in the report to say like there's an overall reduction in reported crime, isn't there? So we are definitely on the right trajectory, definitely. Councillor Hayward-Booth.
2 things, if I may, Chair. I'd just like to record my thanks to Kate and her team for addressing an antisocial behaviour problem in Swimbridge very promptly when it was reported. It was really appreciated. And secondly, on the Strand, I think it's really useful to be able to use the Strand after 4 p.m. and it saves congestion on other routes in the town. But there was a serious problem of people turning right from the square.
Yeah.
And that has been addressed by a camera being installed and fines being imposed. And I wonder if we could do the same with the Strand through the Highways and Traffic Orders Committee, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because it's such a valuable route, and it's a pity it's abused.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to, if that, when that comes up at the Barnsley Place Partnership meeting, I could suggest that we do have representation from Matt Collins from the county council. He might have an opinion on that.
Yeah.
And then we could maybe put that forward to our district councillors who sit on that committee.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's not necessarily, we don't have to vote on that, but if you're happy just to note that, I'll take that forward. Yeah, okay, thank you. Any other questions? Right, so the recommendation is to note the contents of the report. Thank you very much for feeding back to us today. So can I have a proposer that we note the report? Thank you, Councillor Biederman, and second, Councillor Hagan Booth. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Right, we've got another fairly hefty item coming. Would anyone object to having a small 5 to 10 minute break? All right,
Chair, I have got to leave you.
probably now. Okay.
I mean,
Goodbye to our community safety officers, so that's great. So item 8 then, please. Annual licensing policy review, pages 63 to 170, the big one. Report by the lead officer for commercial regulation. Thank you. Thank you.
Very much. Yeah, so on an entirely different subject now, the animal licensing policy. We implemented the animal licensing policy back in 2023. So it's not been in effect for long, but subsequent to that, we've had a couple of fundamental changes in legislation. Firstly, been in respect of the Animal Penalty Notices Act 2022, and the secondly, the newly introduced Animal Welfare Primates Licensing and Regulations, which bring into effect primate licensing in England. I think it's prudent to update the policy to take into account these two pieces of legislation, and at the same time, I'm making a number of other proposals which are to require plans as part of applications, which I think would be really useful, particularly where we've got sites that cross over in terms of ownership, where there are fields. We have things like riding stables and so on that have quite a lot of pasture, so it'd be nice to ascertain which part of that premises actually is licensed, because we cover the things like fencing, poisonous plants and so on and so forth. It'd be useful to clarify the requirement in respect to DBS certificates on licence application being provided to charity trustees. It's just a minor amendment. We've got an out-date reference to services, and we want to make some miscellaneous changes to job titles where they've become obsolete, and reorder some sections to provide a more logical reading order. So you've got in the report a track change document and also the policy as an untracked change document. And in terms of the main amendments, you'll note that they are largely to do with the application process, as I've alluded to, those plans and the DPS. And then we've got some new sections in respect of qualifications of inspectors and appointment of veterinary inspectors, new powers available to inspectors, which is really a direct extract from some of the associated legislation. The Animal Penalty Notices Act introduced fixed penalty notices for a maximum of £5,000. So they're quite a useful tool for the licensing authority, and they can be served in terms of offences under the Animal Welfare Act, Zoo Licensing Act, Dangerous Wild Animal Act, and the Animal Welfare Licensing of Activities Involving Animals regulations, and they're the ones that cover dog boarding, dog breeding, dog daycare, pet shops, exhibiting animals, keeping them for training or exhibition, and riding schools. We've got one case where we're actively exploring already the utilisation of all these fixed penalty notices. I can't provide detail pertaining to that, but maybe at the next meeting we will be able to provide some further update if that has been issued. We know that a number of authorities now nationally have utilised them, not high numbers, but because it's a fairly new tool, but they provide a good sanction for an alternative to prosecution where someone's admitted the offence. It's quite useful that DEFRA have provided a calculator, so it's got culpability and harm factors to come out as the charge. It's not a set fee, so that's useful because the first time we looked at it, it didn't have that calculator in place and it was quite arbitrary, so we feel that's beneficial. Primate licensing, as I've mentioned, that is a new license that's kind of coming into effect for primates in domestic settings. We already have three zoos in the district. We've got Exmoor Zoo, Carmarthen, and you've got the Ilfracombe Aquaria. So 2 of those settings already have primates, so this doesn't impact them. It will be solely primates in domestic settings. We're not aware of any applicants at this point in time, but nonetheless, a little bit like we don't have any boat licenses at this point, we have to provide the ability for people to apply. So we've got a website now and an application form, and it'd be nice to get the primate legislation nicely encapsulated within the policy for when that comes into effect. And people require a licence, and that'll be from next April 2025. We've got some really good resources actually from DEFRA, just to put out to our veterinarians, some nice posters and so on, which we'll do. I think it's really then a case of the public raising awareness that if they do have people next door to them with primates, that they know where to go if they want to report a primate after this legislation is in effect. In essence, there's a transition period, so people can apply now up until that point, and it's only enforced then from April 2025. So some of the other amendments, we have spotted in there that it cites that you can put conditions on animal licence activity licenses when in fact we can't do that. It's a set of conditions that we can't do anything with. They're mandatory set prescribed conditions, so we can't add on any additional conditions, and I think that needs removing, and that's at A6, B5, C7 and D7. You'll see that referenced in 415. It shouldn't have been in there. It's not the position. And we'd like to add an additional section on exceptional circumstances such as changes in business ownership, and to break down sections to provide sort of subtle differences in legislation. The sections were quite bulked before into one area, but the legislation is subtly different. For example, on some premises, like zoos, we can only ascertain if someone's disqualified under certain regulations, whereas some of the other legislation we're able to ascertain if they are suitable or fit and proper for the subtle differences, and so we've encompassed all of those within the policy. Further to this, we'd like to come back again in 2025 and do a review on our fees. I think they're well overdue review. I think it would be really valuable to try and split down some of the fees, for example, based on the number of animals, the number of bitches, the number of horses, that type of thing, to provide more clarity in terms of the process, and B, to ensure that the fee is proportionate to the level of time we take. We have found that officers are spending a huge amount of time inspecting animal premises compared to when the legislation changed, and we have quite a significant number of these activity premises, with over 70 of them, which is quite significant in terms of resource. You have to have a qualified inspector to inspect these. They have to have now the level 3 qualification, which was a change with that piece of legislation. We're very fortunate to have a lady on our team called Casey Thorne, who's absolutely excellent, and she's a real specialist now in these premises, and having her do that provides a level of consistency across the district, which has been really good. So massive thank you for Casey for her continued efforts in been dealing with this. We've had quite a significant backlog in premises. Sadly, we had Phil Fitzsimons pass away this year, which has been a really devastating loss for the team. We've yet to replace him formally. We've had a lady on agency called Vicky Lynn doing quite a few of our annual licence inspections, because you have to have this level 3 inspector. So she's been able to help us a little bit on a part-time basis. She's been doing 3 days a week with us. But we're going to have to go out, obviously, for some form of investment to get the replacement of Phil's post in the new year, we hope. So that's something that will be incoming before SMT business case shortly. In terms of other changes, there's more emphasis now placed on officers making decisions. We've really done that very well within taxi licensing. We've had less burden on subcommittees in the last year, largely on revocations and suspensions of taxi licenses, and we'd like to move that into the annual arena, largely because the timescales associated don't fit particularly well. We haven't done any revocations or suspensions of annual apprentices because actually it's very draconian. If you revoke, that individual can never apply again. It's not even that we can determine it. They just can never apply. So we've not done that, and there has to be very serious welfare implications to the vocal license. But if we were to consider doing some of those things, the timescales don't fit readily with committee. So we would like to be able to have the option to come to committee if it was extremely serious or we wanted that support, or the option for officers to make those decisions, rather like we've done on the taxi licensing with the use of our enforcement officers, and that's worked really well. We've got Noel Bork, who's done a lot of enforcement actions, and that ex-police background's been really valuable in terms of making some really prompt decisions where there's been issues pertaining to public safety, where the public may have been put at immediate risk, and been able to do that soundly. Yeah, I think that probably concludes the efforts on that. What I'm hoping, as you see in the recommendation, is to go out for consultation with this document to members of the licensed community and obviously the public as well. And that'd be a 4-week exercise, and then feedback again to committee in terms of any comments that arise from the consultation.
Yeah, okay. Yes, there are 2 recommendations there. One is, as Kate just said, the consultation, and then there's the
I missed the
second one.
Yeah, sorry.
Which is about the primate fees.
Yeah, so with the new legislation, I don't want to wait until the budget goes through. I could put it in the budget now for it to come into effect, but just in case we get an application, I'd like to put those 2 fees in, 505 for new applications and 255 for variations, 48 for renewals, largely because I fear that we could get an application in advance of the April implementation date. And I have put in some calculations within the report to show how I've come up with those figures. That also we invoice the true cost of the veterinary fees, and that's totally fair.
And also worth noting that some of those fees don't stay with the council, do they? They go into a government pot, don't they?
Yes. So the annual penalties notices, the fees go to the consolidated, and the charge goes to the consolidated fund, with the exception of the expenses or again, the surplus goes to the consolidated fund. So it's not in any way that the council can profiteer from the issue of these notices.
And you answered my question about the publicity side, which is what I was going to ask about. How will people know that they need to register their primates if there's anybody out there who's got them?
Good tools there. We've got a website live already, just in terms of what they need to do. But I think it would be nice to put those sort of posters out, and they've got a QR code that will then link in as well
through the vets. That's obviously a really good idea as well. So thank you for that. Again, another excellent report. And a lot of hard work gone into that policy. I know it's a massive policy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a big one.
So yeah. So any thoughts or questions from anybody? Any amendments they might want to make or?
Ready we trust.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay.
I'd just like to say, because it was lovely, Brilliant report, thank you, and I'm sure you're on top of it. It is complicated and I've been on licensing for 12 years and it's still difficult, you know, all those establishments that need regular sort of checking and everything. And it must have been really difficult for you and your team to have, you know, held this together without Phil, because I know that on a regular basis he visited these premises and I think to keep this going, and it must be really difficult to have, you know,
it was still
have
good
carried
comments,
on.
you know, from people, you know, that are really shocked because obviously he dealt with them for quite a number of years,
Yeah.
and the links that he'd forged with people over that time period are just immense. And you'll get people that are very surprised, you know, why is Phil doing my inspection, and you know, genuinely sort of upset by that, having only met him for a few times on inspection, but he'd obviously you know, was so warming and did his job so professionally that they were they could remember him so well. Yeah.
If there was issues, Phil seemed to sort of go out, deal with it in a lovely manner, and then report back, you know, and you know, I'm sure on that side of it, as well as everything else, he's been deeply missed. So, you know, excellent report, and you know, cracking job.
Thanks for carrying on getting through that. It's a big shoe to fill, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so do I then have a proposer for the two recommendations? We'll do them on block.
Yeah.
Councillor Norman, yeah, and Councillor Hayward Booth, second. All those in favour? Unanimous? Thank you. I think that's it then. Okay, let's go to the meeting. What time did we say? 12:16? Yeah. Lovely.
Well done.